episode 8 of season 2 of the Midnight Burial. Thank you for being here. It is very hot where I am. Bay Area is having a rare boiling streak, and it's hot at night, something that I absolutely hate. And because I'm recording right now, I try to keep it as soundproof where I am. And so I shut the doors, I turn off the fans. So I'm suffering. Throwing that I'm fat, and wow, that's a terrible combination. I should just be like your boy Zach and not give a damn and just have fans going as I'm recording. I get a kick out of when I hear that. It's just like, don't you want people to listen to this? I don't think anyone wants to hear the fan noise. Although, granted, I listen, don't I? So maybe I'm wrong. All right, so we've had an interesting week. Labor Day just ended. And we're going to talk a couple of the issues of the moment. First of which being the Peacemaker orgy, which in many circles is being sardonically referred to as the Peacemaker bisexual orgy. And while I understand people are trying to be funny or whatever, it's missing the point. Or to put it more accurately, it's obscuring what you really should be upset about with this particular gratuitous content. So to be clear, Peacemaker is rated M. It's not, explicitly for children. Being rated M means it is not for children. However, James Gunn, the director of Superman and head of the current DCU, the man with the 10-year plan, is saying to everyone, we have Superman, but most important thing, you need to watch Peacemaker. That's the next chunk of, what we've got going on. So you want the people who took their children to go see Crypto running around barking and biting people and Superman in your PG-13 film, you're telling all these people who are supposed to be buying into the DCU, here's the next thing. By the way, it's blowjobs and people humping. How is that supposed to work? Like, that's you. That's James Gunn. You're telling everyone this is what you need to tune into. Well, apparently what they need to tune into is something that not all of your audience can watch. Now, Marvel, they have some of their own mature content going on. You go back to Punisher and Daredevil, you had a lot of extreme violence, even sex scenes in those. But, I don't know. I feel like it's not quite apples to apples. This content that you've gotten from Marvel is kind of explicitly cordoned off. It's like, this is the violent, mature stuff. It's there for those who want it. You don't absolutely need it to enjoy and partake in the rest of the Marvel universe. Whereas James Gunn is foot and mouth saying, oh yeah, everyone needs to watch this for, the next bit of the DCU. Yeah, but not everyone can. Unless, and this is where we start getting into the problematic territory here, that is the idea. That you lure in an audience that probably shouldn't be watching this stuff just yet. And exposing them to it. So, recall what I talked about last episode of the podcast, the whole issue with Roblox. And how one of the fears I have is that if you were to go to Discovery with that lawsuit that they have going on with the state of Illinois. No. Is it Illinois? Louisiana. That you're going to find things like moderators or even devs or whoever who are pushing this sort of behavior and agenda and content. I've mentioned you have people who are supporters now of quote-unquote MAPS, minor attracted people, right? AKA a pedophile. But you slap a fancy-sounding label on it, and you try to churn up sympathy, and all of a sudden you have a cause, and you have activists pushing the cause. Well, you have something like Peacemaker. I'm saying the idea that he is, as a character, bisexual doesn't matter. But in terms of what you have in terms of creators and what they want, and the activist crowd that is in Hollywood, we know that there's an agenda to push certain things. Now, I'm not. Take the Lightyear thing, right? Snoop's in trouble because Snoop was talking about Lightyear and how you had the lesbian mothers and how his grandkid was like, how do two women have a baby? And he's like, oh shit, how am I supposed to answer that question? I get where he's coming from, but maybe it's because I live in California, right? I have different views on that sort of stuff, all right? It's obvious that some of my politics lean right. But I didn't have a problem with that scene in Lightyear. They weren't showing the lesbians having sex. Because I wouldn't be happy seeing the lesbians in Lightyear have sex any more than I'd be happy Mr. and Mrs. Incredible having sex. There's a time and place for everything. And we don't need to have, the lesbian couple making love. But yeah, there's quite a few people in this country who grow up with, two moms, two dads, whatever. And to me, that isn't an inherently evil thing, or necessarily even something that needs to be treated like it's controversial, okay? But I do think that if you're the activist and you're making Peacemaker, you're not only making a point of making him bisexual, not because you actually care about that sort of thing, you care about it in terms of your activism and your politics. That's what Hollywood's about. Warner Brothers doesn't give a shit about John Cena's character being gay unless it gets them accolades with the right crowd. So you have that, but then the deviancy of it, right? And sound morally superior deviancy. Everyone has their quirks, their kinks, their things that they're into. Probably no one who has listened to this hasn't partaken in watching pornography. Any of these things, right? I'm not claiming to be some angel in that regard. But what I'm saying is, in terms of values you'd like to push on, children to the greater public, being part of the orgy crowd isn't one of them. But, if you're a hyper left-leaning activist, yeah, you want to, quote-unquote, normalize those things. So you have a major project coming from a big studio like Warner Brothers, where the hero is engaging in the orgy, or is watching the orgy, whatever, because I don't think John Cena participates. But regardless, that's the point, is you want this to be accepted. You want to, and especially if you're getting a kid to watch it, think, oh, well, that's normal. People are just in orgies all the time. That's how this works. This is the mindset of these people. And so if you're upset about this being in Peacemaker, that is the reason you should be upset. I'll give you another example of what I'm kind of talking about here. Call of Duty is an M-rated series. I have seen t-shirts for children that say Call of Duty. I remember being in a JCPenney's. It's probably over a decade ago at this point. But I was walking around with my aunt, and she was shopping for one of my cousins for Christmas. And as I'm looking, I'm like, this is the kids section. And there's a little kid-sized Call of Duty shirt. And then you take it another step, you have Halloween costumes for things like Halo that are fitted for a child. Why do we have M ratings on anything if you're going to make this shit for Timmy, the 10-year-old? It doesn't make any sense. But see, that's the thing. They know that the kids partake. They know that they play. They know that they have dipshit parents who are just like, hey, well, it's a game. It's fine. And they let them play, and that's it. So these companies take advantage, and they know. And they will produce things like that. So it's no different here, where you had the very PG-13, very mostly family-friendly Superman. And here comes James Gunn saying, yeah, that's the next thing you have to watch for the DCU. The show that has a fucking orgy. And that's pretty insidious as far as I'm concerned. But if you're just harping about it because bisexual orgy, you're missing the point. You're more of a problem than a help. Because these people should be called out for what they're doing for what it is. This extends into a lot of the issues people have with some of these books that you see at, elementary schools. Where it's featuring explicit nudity or sexual content. Talking about things that children don't need to be hearing about. Because they, again, there's this protection that it gets. You know, people, oh, you're attacking the LGBTQ. It's like, no one's attacking LGBTQ anything. But if I'm saying Timmy doesn't need to be watching something with an orgy in it, don't try to tether it to like, oh, well, you're attacking the queer community because you don't like the orgies. It's like, you know how many fucking LGBTQ people don't get into orgies? You're acting like the abnormal thing is criticizing it as though that's what you all do, when we know that that's not the case. I have known many, many queer people in my life. And no, it's not just this universal thing that everyone just goes around fucking indiscriminately. That's not how it works. So this gets pushed in intentionally. It gets pushed in as a means of, again, re-education, making you think a certain way, normalizing, and on and on. But, you know, just look at who James Gunn is, right? James Gunn, go back to the controversy with him in 2018, where he gets fired from Disney as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because of old tweets. And of course, I mean, just go on to Google. Google, with its own brainwashing machine, it describes the incident as posts that were made by Gunn between 2008 and 2012 unearthed by right-wing commentators, deliberately unearthed by right-wing commentators. All of that making it sound like this is some farcical, made-up thing. It's like, I don't give a shit who unearthed it. But you paint it as right-wing because the idea is to remove the legitimacy of the complaint. Oh, that's just the kooky, crazy right-wingers. But listen to some of the things he was saying. I like when little boys touch me in my silly place. Talks about a monkey masturbating on a young child. Has a edgy rape joke in 2009. The best thing about being raped is when you're done being raped and it's like, whew, this feels great, not being raped. I mean, the dude's an imbecile. You know, he's making, and I don't doubt for 1 second he's just making jokes. But you look at the type of thing he's into and what he finds funny, and on, this deviancy fits into that, probably. I don't know if it's part of his lifestyle or whatever it might be, but James Gunn is his own flavor. And he's a flavor that, frankly, I don't think should be in charge of the DCU. I enjoyed Superman. I reviewed it. It's here on this channel. Thought it was okay. But it was by no means a home run. It wasn't this absolutely stunning movie. It had problems. But I think the biggest problem is James Gunn. He's not a Superman guy. And he sits down to make a Superman movie, and ultimately the only way he can do it is by shoehorning in a bunch of other characters and having to diminish Superman to an extent. Frankly, because I think of James Gunn's own personal politics. They're coming out in Peacemaker. It just speaks to who he is. So, you're going to bank on this guy making the DCU work, and the first project he gives you is fucking orgy time and Peacemaker post-Superman. The bulk of those people who went to go see Superman either can't or shouldn't be or aren't going to be interested in watching that. So why is it, you know, again, you can do it, but why are you billing it as this is the next big building block? You're an idiot. I'm sorry, you're a fucking moron, James Gunn, if that's what you're coming out and telling people. Or you're devious, and you want the wrong crowd stepping in to watch this. Oops, tee-hee, the kids saw the big old orgy. I don't really know what to think, because I think Hollywood's a big cesspool. But pretty lame. And then, like, take Supergirl. She's this, like, shit-faced loser that shows up in the Fortress of Solitude at the end of the movie, the Superman movie. So you have cocaine orgy hero, because let's not forget he's snorting coke. Very heroic, right? So that's Peacemaker, cocaine and orgies, and then you've got shit-faced partier Supergirl. It's like, I don't know, I've read plenty of dark comics. I've read comics with a lot of like fucked up stuff in it. Go read any of Garth Ennis's Punisher books and you will see some twisted stuff. But there's a time and place. And when you're trying to build this larger superhero universe, I feel like it should be something that is accessible to as many people as possible. And James Gunn only seems interested in making it accessible to people who are like him. That are like, yeah, I like shit-faced loser types. I want to go get drunk, so yeah, that's what my superhero should be. I just don't think that that's the brightest idea. I don't think that's the direction you should go. But here we are. And, no one's talking about Peacemaker because of what a brilliant story it's got going on. People are talking about it because of this. And, if you want to go with the whole, any attention's good attention in terms of celebrity, I don't know that that's true. So, bad move all around by Gunn, DC. Just not very smart. I mean, you can even take it a step further. I know John Cena's his whole start is wrestling, right? Well, a lot of children are into wrestling too. So he has this baked-in audience of youthful people. And then you give us the orgy. I find that pretty suspicious. I don't think it's an accident. The headlines surrounding John Cena. I forget what he's on the cover of right now. But one of the magazines I've seen floating around says something about, like, just the usual Hollywood obsession with, non-traditional masculinity. So it's like, bisexual, in orgies, snorting coke, just all these things. Why? Like I said, it's meant to fuck with your brain. It's meant to retrain you. You're supposed to think a certain way. You're supposed to act a certain way. So to compel that, you take someone like John Cena, who has come across as traditionally manly, and you do things to go counter to that image. That's how this works. Which kind of leads us to the next thing I felt like talking about, which is Take Us North. Now, this is a Kickstarter game produced by Anima Interactive, a socially conscious independent games and immersive media studio that blends art and technology to spark positive cultural and social change. So they're telling you right there in the name, activism, right? And if you look at Take Us North, just go in here to the page, their Kickstarter. It's an interactive narrative experience inspired by real-world stories that immerse its audience in the poignant journeys of migrants and asylum seekers on their way to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. So I have mentioned that I am Mexican, but recall, when it comes to activists, particularly far-left activists, if you're Mexican and don't say things that you're supposed to the way that you're supposed to, you don't count. Or you're this, you're that. You're a problem. So I have my feelings on things like illegal immigration. Because that's what this is about. And this game apparently was shown off either... It was at some point during Gamescom. And I think Asmongold got his hands on the reveal and the person who was talking about it. And he had quite a few things to say about the game. I've seen other people like FNT talking about it. My issues are a couple different things. For one, they go and try to hide after the fact. And they will claim, of course, that the racists came out of the woodwork, we're saying this, we're saying that. I personally think it's more about this sort of content is being produced explicitly to, as I just mentioned, contort your thoughts a very particular way. You're supposed to view things a certain way. That's how the activist works. And that is how the embedded media activist works. Again, I talked about this last episode. Take someone like a Jason Schreier, who I don't personally believe when he was saying, oh yeah, when I was over at, who's the people that made Dragon Age? BioWare, I guess. They never mentioned the Chuds and talking about DEI and dot, 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 dot. It's like, we know these things are discussed. We know that it's an issue. But we know that you don't admit it, because what happens is, if you do, you legitimize that it's a problem, at least to some people. I'm not saying everyone. I couldn't even in good faith straight up say I know for a fact that it's most people. I tend to think it's most people. But I couldn't tell you I can point at a statistic and say, yeah, I know for sure. But to just even say it for somebody like a Schreier is to legitimize it even a tiny bit. So, with what you have here with this game, you have developers who clearly are out on a mission, clearly want to push change. It says here, again, they want to spark positive social change. So for them, you have to portray it as the evil racist chuds have come crawling out of the woodwork to attack us and say terrible things about the game. But see, the issue is that a lot of the debate isn't framed in a way that's racist. It's framed in a very pragmatic, here are the real world problems that arise from illegal immigration. But you can't have that debate, because there is no real counterpoint to the issues that get brought up. Things like identity theft, things like gangbangers that weasel their way up via illegal immigration, human trafficking. If you are buying food off of an illegal alien street vendor, there is a good chance you are buying from someone that is basically like an indentured servant to like a cartel. I'm not even joking. So when you go buy your fresas from a dude in the Walmart parking lot, or you go get a cup of fruit from one of those little carts with the umbrella, the rainbow umbrella that you'll see here in the Bay Area, a lot of those people are there because they have been compelled to be there. I've gotten fruit from those carts. But you do a little research and you start to realize what's actually going on, and it's like, oh, this actually is not necessarily a good thing. But that talk makes a certain crowd very, very uncomfortable. Don't want to lean too much into this, but I'm sorry, it is a fact that you have a very sheltered crowd of people in places like the Bay Area, for instance. You can't even talk about it with them. They just don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about, they're indentured, they're this, they're that, you're just intolerant. It's like, no, this is a problem. But, to me, the other problem is you have someone like this studio. Now, I don't know who's making this game. Maybe there are people here who are actually illegal themselves who helped to make this game. Maybe they have family connected directly to illegal immigration. I don't know. All I know is it made $58,000. There's 54 backers. That's nothing. No one's going to play this game. But they would like people to play it. They're trying to kind of push to get people to play it. But it got the wrong attention at Gamescom, and now they're trying to do their best to hide it a bit. It's a game with ties to Sweet Baby Inc. It's a game with ties to the World Economic Forum. These are all people who, as far as most of the general public are concerned, are people who are trying to compel thoughts, compel speech, compel opinions. So you go hiding, it doesn't look good for you. So I'm like, well, if you have something legit to say, just come out and say it. Acting like you need to hide. It's like if someone is being a lunatic online, call the cops, get them arrested. But what you, to me, assert by kind of turning away, deleting social media, and on and on and on, you're basically just trying to hide. And what you're doing is you're confirming, yes, this is meant more to be propaganda versus an actual open, honest dialogue. Issues like illegal immigration, there's a lot of different things that happen with it. I will tell you this, one thing that has always frustrated me with it is that you have, for instance, the Democrats in this country who will act like they're all for the plight of the illegal alien. But I just sit there and I look, and again, you want to paint me as a conservative. Here's what I kind of think about this topic is, if you are someone who's been here illegally, let's say you've been here illegally for decades. You produce a family, you produce children. Your children stay out of trouble, you stay out of trouble. You put them through school, you put them through college. You have children who become, maybe even enlisted in our military, stuff like that. That's somebody who, as far as I'm concerned, sounds like an upstanding, what we would consider ideal American. So why is it I never hear the solution being, we'll find a way for that particular type of person who's come here illegally to find a route to citizenship? That's never what you hear. It's always ways of demonizing anyone who questions them being here. It's always an attempt to skirt the real issue. Which to me is, those people, they don't actually care. They want the illegal immigrant here because that is a source of extremely cheap labor that you don't pay minimum wage to, that you don't pay benefits to, that you don't pay, you don't give them time off. And if one of them collapses in the field while they're working, or on the job on the construction site, you get somebody to throw them in the back of a truck and dump them off in front of a hospital somewhere, and then you wipe your hands. You never hear that talk from anybody coming from the so-called left. It's always just, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? It's like, yeah, why do you think that is the situation? The situation's very intentional. They don't want life to be better for the illegal immigrant. And so you have all these horrible things that happen to them. And you create these situations that are untenable, but they're able to continue on because, again, you have this 21st century slave labor force. It is truly insidious. I look at it as no different than like this insanity with, you lower the grading scale so that if you get like a 60%, that's a B. So you have what would be considered a D or an F, and you have people, these activist types, who are saying they're doing you a favor by letting your kid get a B by getting a 60%. That just means you don't know shit. But that's okay because you're a certain color, and the activist says, if we were to actually expect you to learn this stuff and get good grades, it's quote-unquote white supremacy or something. I mean, just listen to these arguments and you start to see it for what it is. I know I do, because I'm on the receiving end of it. But a lot of these people who live, again, in these protected bubbles in places like the Bay Area, they're not on the receiving end. They're the ally. And they think they're doing me and my people a favor when they put up with that kind of stuff or push it. So take us north, again, it's easier to hide if perhaps your goal isn't really the discussion, it's purely to push a message. And again, that's your business, right? You're a creator. You believe in the stories that you are presenting in the game. Well, then you present them. And you say, I don't really care about the other stuff. All that matters to me is, here's this really sad story of somebody who's traveling north. But it's very romanticized. It feels dishonest to me. It feels like somebody's kind of wet dream of, these aren't people. These are the idealized vision I have of what an illegal alien is and what they go through. I want to imagine this tragic, sad world that they escaped from. Mind you, going down south, right? It's like, so you're escaping from Mexico. Many of you are people who vacation to Mexico. So they're escaping the place that you go to get shit-faced in Cancun or something. Like, that part of it is not lost on me. But again, that's where I feel. That's what I feel when I see this sort of stuff. Is it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels like somebody who is giving you this imagined version of things. But I will repeat, I don't know the people making this game. And they might be giving me real stories of themselves or their family. And I can't begrudge them that, you know? I just think, again, be a little more honest about it. Just be like, I'm not really interested in the debate of right or wrong when it comes to illegal immigration and the real problems it presents. I just feel bad for these people and want you to feel bad for them too. But, do we do that in this world? No. Instead, it's games. But, take us north. We'll see what happens. Not particularly sure when it comes out. Not really going to spend any time scrolling this Kickstarter page to figure it out. Like I said, 654 backers. Not even 1,000 people. Have fun with your game. Maybe it'll reach a few more. Maybe Xbox will put this on Game Pass and hope that it gets some people to play it. But I doubt it. I think that people are a little tired of the pandering, and they're a little tired of the one-sided debating that we get from our entertainment entities in this world. So still interesting, just the reaction. Oh, we gotta hide it. Because Sweet Baby Inc., I'm assuming if you listen to this show that you are probably at least mildly jacked into these things that happen in the industry, the goings on. They're a consulting agency that helps with narrative development, character development, all these different things. But they have been, recorded at things like GDC, their social media presence, and on, talking about a lot of stuff that is just, it's pure activism. And it sounds, again, sounds, allege, however you want to frame it. It sounds a lot like they push for certain things and that they tend to get their way. And they have connections to pretty powerful external forces. So that does make me a little concerned when I see their involvement. I'm sorry, I think there are better ways to get diversity and inclusion and all that into media. These guys are not it. Like I said, they would look at me and see me as a problem, despite the fact I am a Mexican. I am the quote-unquote audience that you seek, that you're trying to connect with. So, keep that in mind, I would say. So I guess start leaning into the end of the episode here by talking about some of the stuff I've been playing. We had Gears of War Reloaded come out recently. I believe it launched on August 26th, if I'm remembering correctly. And apparently it has surpassed... They're using that ridiculous metric now. I'm looking at a gamesindustry.biz article. Surpasses 1 million players. So what does that mean? You might be seeing that statistic go around a lot lately. Ubisoft has been in love with saying players for the past couple years. Players is their way of touting engagement without actually saying sales. Because if it's sold 1 million copies, that's what you would have heard, is Gears of War Reloaded surpasses 1 million sales, 2 million sales, 750,000 sales, like whatever number, right? But they don't say that, because what have they done? Well, Reloaded is on Game Pass. It's also available on, PlayStation 5, which is just, it blows my mind. They have fucking Gears of War on a PlayStation. What is Microsoft doing? But anyway, so, to make things sound hunky-dory, you say players. That's the term. But it's kind of a bullshitty metric. We don't really truly know what that means when they say players. It's like, is that a mix of people who bought and are playing? People who are, basically renting it through Game Pass? What are we talking here? You'll never know, because they don't want you to know. It's meant to obscure. But I would be surprised if Gears of War Reloaded didn't at least make something of a splash. I mean, I would imagine that PlayStation players who have never touched Gears of War have to at least be mildly curious about it. And, I mean, I feel like Gears of War, especially that first game, is kind of an evergreen title. So I'm hoping that it's selling well, but there's a few things kind of going against Reloaded. One of them is that it's like a remaster of a remaster, right? It's like the Gears of War Ultimate, and then pushed to the next level. Now it's like a 4K version, and whatever other tweaks that they've made. But it's like we've gotten a remaster of the first Gears of War. We got Ultimate, so why are we like again? Going back for this new one? It's like it's not even like that other one is that old. So I think that's a little bit of an oddity. I mean, honestly, why didn't you just do the Gears of War trilogy Reloaded? And you throw Ultimate in there, but you do the first, the other two games, upscale them to 4K, make whatever quality of life changes you want. I don't know. And then I'm playing it. I love Gears of War, okay? The books are also very great. And I will admit, the comics you can unlock, they're starting to get me curious, thinking, should I have been reading the Gears of War comics all this time? I saw Karen Travis. She wrote the first comic I unlocked. She wrote that issue. I'm like, Karen Travis writes some good Gears of War books. She's writing the comic too. But in terms of the oh man, I'm having an old man moment. I'm losing my train of thought. Hold on, it'll come back to me. Give me a second. Okay, it's starting to recoalesce in my mind. I love Gears of War. I love the property. I love the characters. I love all that. But sitting and playing it again, because it's been a minute since I played Ultimate, I am like, I don't know. I think one of the issues I'm having is I'm not like a huge fan of that sort of like the way the camera zooms in when you start to dash. It's like sometimes I just want to move fast, and instead the game, it creates this, it zooms in and it's like right behind you. It doesn't totally feel like you get to kind of go exactly where you want to when you're running. That part of it was a little hard to get back into. And the shooting's satisfying. I mean, it does feel good, the weight of the weapons and firing at the grubs and everything. But I don't know. I'm going to wait until I've played more of this to give it a proper assessment. But if it doesn't sell well, I'm just wondering if maybe Gears hasn't aged quite as well as I'm thinking it did. But I'll let you know for sure the next time we talk. I don't want to shit on Gears just yet. It does look very pretty. Another big release, though, was Snake Eater. So Metal Gear Solid Delta, which is just a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3. So, canonically, this is the first Metal Gear story, right? This is the origin of Snake, Big Boss Snake becoming Big Boss. And so you're in Russia, you are trying to save a Soviet scientist, but things go south. I'm not going to spoil, even though this game is already pretty old. Let's see, how old is MGS3 at this point? Jesus, it's just about 20 years. So, sorry if you're getting spoilers for a 20-year-old game. I'm doing my best not to give them to you, because this will be quite a few people's first exposure to Metal Gear. And so it's a little heartbreaking for me knowing that like it's referring to like Kojima made the original. Kojima did not make this one. Hideo Kojima, the mastermind of Metal Gear, is not involved with this remake of this game that he invested so much of himself into. I mean, the entire series is his baby. And to think that we are in an era playing an MGS game that is not his just feels so weird. But it does seem, at least so far, like the people who made Delta had quite a bit of reverence for the original. Now, I am on the lookout for censorship, and I failed to notice if at the beginning there was a trigger warning. I believe people were saying there was some kind of a trigger warning. I'm going to see for sure before I review it, but at least so far, everything just seems like how I remember it. And it looks really good. It's been remade in Unreal Engine, but it's I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like it looks like MGS3 still, even though it's been made in Unreal. The thing is though, and I'm gonna try to maybe go back and mess with the original a bit, but there's a very specific sort of color palette to MGS3. MGS3, my brain remembers a lot of browns and greens and muted. The color in this game pops a lot more. And that's not like the worst thing in the world, but I do feel like the color choices in the original, that palette was a deliberate decision. You know, you could make things look bright and bubbly and colorful on PS2. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. There are plenty of games that do look that way. So to go into this one and, you know, you have a ton of detail and realism, and that's all great, but I feel like some of the palette has gone away. I don't know. I'm still in the early stages of playing it, so I might be just talking out of my ass right now. But those are like my kind of initial thoughts. But the other thing I'm doing is I selected the quote-unquote modern play controls just to see what it feels like in comparison to the original. And I think I can change back at any time. I'm hoping. Because I want to see, you know, what it feels like. It's fascinating. My brother-in-law, he gets frustrated with how so many games now, they like play the same in terms of like the control setup is the same thing, like from game to game to game. For him, it's like, well, you know, and you know, I'm not directly quoting the man, so forgive me if I get it wrong, dear brother-in-law, but if I'm understanding him correctly, it's something along the lines of like, you had more creative setups back in the day. People are coming up with what they thought worked in terms of this is the button you should press to bring up the inventory. This is how you should scroll through it. This is how you should select it. This is how you should pull up a weapon and aim and fire. And it's not necessarily having to be the Call of Duty press L to aim down sights, you know, or L2, press R2 to fire. Like, why does it have to be those things? And I get where he's coming from. You know, there have been plenty of older games where the control scheme has thrown me off because I'm so used to mimicking the Call of Duty setup. But then you sit and play them and you're like, you know, this actually does work for what you're doing. And it's a shame that so many of these creators think that they have to go back and mess around. And it's like, oh, it has to feel like Call of Duty. Why? I don't think it has to. A good example of that is Metroid Prime. The remaster of Metroid Prime has a modern setup that you can choose, where you have like dual sticks to move and aim, simultaneously. I hate playing that way in that game. Because I'm like, no, you know what? It totally works to not be using that right stick to aim. Where Samus plants her feet and you manually aim and you're just using the one stick for all of it. It absolutely works. And if you think it doesn't, you're full of crap. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Nah, you can have your opinion. You can love the dual stick setup. I absolutely don't think you need it. I think that original control scheme works. And as far as I'm concerned, the original control scheme for MGS3, which mimics MGS2, it's all great. You know, it is still intuitive. I think it's still very well mapped out. So I want to kind of go back and forth and see, is this an improvement? Is it not? We'll find out. But I'm hoping for no narrative changes. I think I might have talked about this during the last episode with the Gamescom reveals. But like, I want MGS3 to be as, you know, untouched as possible. Because frankly, that's what this work by Hideo Kojima deserves. He's a master. You know, he's like one of the greatest designers that's ever lived. You leave his shit alone. He does not need any of your corrections, my friend, your modern day-isms, your anything. He's got this, okay? The other thing, though, is it is interesting going back to MGS3 because MGS5 is so good. Not necessarily, like, in terms of narrative. I hate that they got rid of David Hayter as Snake. But just in terms of, like, gameplay. Remember, this came out before Breath of the Wild. But it has a lot of that sort of idea of, like, you get to do what you want to approach objectives and this big open landscape that you can explore. It's just such an amazing game and beautiful. You know, it's like that game's already pretty old, relatively speaking, and it to me just still looks stunning. It's just such a testament to Kojima. And how, you know, as the years go by, it's just he keeps evolving. It's like, here's the basic Metal Gear formula and controls, and then he just keeps tweaking them. And every time it's like, yeah, you know, it's like it gets more intuitive. It gets just the little changes add up to a better experience. I still to this day remember playing Peace Walker on my PSP and thinking this is every bit as good as anything I've played on a console. It's incredible. And the just so smart, the setup and all these things that you can do, you know, the base building. So to go back to MGS3, I mean, it's not like it's this terrible thing. It's just, it does feel, it feels different, and maybe my brain prefers MGS5. I don't know, but I just recently replayed MGS1, the PlayStation version too, not even Twin Snakes, and I had a ton of fun with it. So I think that this game is absolutely going to hold up after, you know, all these years have passed. I think it's a great, great game. And then finally, you know, a third double dip, if you'll, if we can put it that way, is Kirby and the Forgotten Planet, you know, the Nintendo Switch 2 edition with Star-Crossed World bolted on. Wow, it looks good. I need to take like a Switch that doesn't have anything updated, throw that into the dock, put it on, play through a stage, and then compare it directly to how it looks on Switch 2, because Switch 2 I think has done like an amazing job of just upscaling everything and making it look prettier. Because it's looking really good on my TV right now. Like, it's this, there's certain games, and Nintendo I think is probably the best, if not one of the best at doing this, that feeling of like toys. Like, it feels like playing with toys almost. And it has that sort of visceral childhood feeling of like taking your action figures and jumping into a pool with them. You know, like an above ground pool. It's what we had at my grandma's house. And I'd take toys into the water. Like, I'm going through the tropical levels in Forgotten Land right now. And I'm just like, man, it feels so fun being in the water and floating and attacking the different enemies and just all the little details, palm trees, little mini islands. Love it. You know, it's just so great. But the Star-Crossed World content is really well done. I've only gotten through a couple of those initial levels in it. Again, this is, you know, prepping for a review. But at least what I've played so far, it's totally worth the double dip. And it's nice that you can just upgrade it, you know, if you have the original. So I think that's pretty reasonable. But if you haven't played Forgotten Land, it's easily like a top 3 Kirby game. Like, it's one of the best Kirby games ever made. You've got Robobot, you've got Forgotten Land, and then options, right? Like maybe Superstar. But so, it's just so good. And it's nice because we still don't know what the hell is coming to Switch 2. You know, Switch 2 is still just this frickin' mystery in terms of what we're going to get. Yeah, they've announced things. There's upscaled Switch 2 versions of blah, blah, blah. What's the new stuff? Show me the new Mario. Show me the new Zelda. What are we getting? Tease it. You know, let's start going. Part of me, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what they're going to announce at whatever the next Nintendo Direct is. But I do just kind of look and think, did you guys maybe lean a little too hard into, oh, we're going to have a bunch of upscaled Switch games to fill in the gap between now and when you start getting more of the dedicated Switch 2 games. Like, I get doing that, but did you do too much? And do you not have enough coming down the pike that's just pure original content? We will find out together, I guess. But, that's just about where I'm at in terms of gaming. Oh, I don't know if I talked about TMNT Tactical Takedown, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. I am liking that game a lot. It's a tactical RPG with the Ninja Turtles, and it's pretty interesting. It's got like, yeah, it's turn-based combat, but it feels very oddly athletic considering it's a turn-based game and you're going tile by tile. So keep your eyes open. I hope to have a review for that soon. But it's like a $20 game. Has the Ninja Turtles. Seems to be set maybe in the IDW Turtleverse. Kind of hard to tell, but it's fun and definitely worth a look. So yeah, that's what's on my my docket right now in terms of games. And yeah, other than that, I'm still sitting and sweltering. I had an interesting Friday as well. I went to a middle school dance for the first time since I went to my 8th grade like commencement dance back in, what would that have been? I guess like 1999, 1998. I remember that was the first dance I had gone to for middle school and was completely unprepared because I didn't know that people treated it like a prom. So like I at least showed up in a button shirt. My buddy was in like a nice sweater, and then a bunch of kids were in like prom dresses. And we felt super stupid. I felt stupid at this dance because I was forced to go because I'm one of the the staff. So my boss is like, all the middle school teachers, you got to come, you got to help chaperone. I'm like, oh god. So I'm surrounded by not even just our students. It was like schools from within the system, a bunch of them all together. And I'm just like surrounded by all these middle school kids running around. I had to tell some of them to knock it off because they were getting too rough. Apparently, Stussy is the brand of choice right now for the middle school kid, at least in the Bay Area. So if you're trying to be hip and one of the kids, go buy some Stussy, I guess. But it was just funny seeing all of them. None of the boys wanted to dance with any of the girls, which I think is probably par for the course for middle school. But I do think it kind of speaks to this weird society we're in where it's like the boys have to be extra on eggshells. But then you got the girls and they're all dressed trying to look, nice and whatever. And I'm sure they would be happy to dance with some of the boys. But they're awkward too. They're all awkward. It was just so funny. And like the dudes are finding every excuse they can to dance among themselves and near the girls, but not with the girls. It took a toll on my throat having to yell at everyone to behave nonstop throughout the night. And also just yelling to be heard, because man, it was loud. And I don't think I recognized but maybe 2 songs that were being played. Granted, I don't care much for anything that isn't really like hard rock or 80s new wave anyway, so I'm probably not the best person to ask about in terms of music. And then I went karaokeing that night, which was fun. And also funny because I ran into a coworker. Like, I was just going to go. Like, I just felt like karaokeing. So I'm like, I'm just going to go. I know they have it at this bar on Fridays. And I walk in and I hear, Mr. Marujo. And I'm like, what? This definitely isn't a student. And I turn around as one of my coworkers. I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm supposed to just be here making an ass of myself alone. That's fine. So, yeah. I'm a little tired, guys. You get a shorter episode this time, but that's fine, right? You don't need an hour plus every time of me yakking. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you had a good Labor Day rest. And if you had to work, God bless you. You kept the world spinning. Not everyone gets to have the day off. And I guess that's it. I'll talk to you hopefully next week. Hopefully soon. Y'all have a good night. Take care.